Welcome to Believing the Word with author and pastor Dan Shunk. This program is a ministry of Calvary Chapel Chambersburg in Chambersburg, Pennsylvania. Here's what's coming up in today's message.
That box you see in the middle, that's the outer court. The outside mark is a 1 mile marker. So not only is the outer court special and holy, as you come into the outer court, you're thinking, well, I'm getting ready to serve the Lord. I'm going to worship the Lord. But even the 1 mile radius around the temple complex in this millennial kingdom is considered holy. But in the King James, it actually says that this 1 mile standoff separates the holy from the profane. Maybe another way to say that is it separates the holy from what is common. The idea is that when you even get within 1 mile of the temple, you are to treat it as holy. There's something special about this.
Well, the Battle of Gog is over. The Lord has triumphed and his restoration has taken place. Ezekiel 40 through 43 gives us a breathtaking vision of the millennial temple, where every detail reflects God's holiness, perfect order, and his faithfulness. We reach the pinnacle when the glory of the Lord returns to the temple once more, signaling God's restored presence among his people. This vision points to Christ's future reign, reminding us that God always keeps his promises and will one day dwell with his people in righteousness and peace forever. Now here's Pastor Dan in the book of Ezekiel as he continues his message, The Millennial Temple.
So as we pick up in verse 5, we're going to start by looking at this temple, and we're going to start with the outer court. The next big section from verse 5, and if you'd like to outline your Bible, I'll actually give you the verses, because we're not going to read hardly any of these. So I will give you the verses that give you the information that I'm about to say. So if you want to just outline which verses say which things, you can do that. Maybe you have headers in your Bible. Again, we're looking at a blueprint. It's what we're about to do. But from verse 5 now down to verse 27, we're looking at the outer court, and we're looking at the north, south, and east gates to this temple. Verse 5 specifically talks about, it describes this 9 foot by 9 foot wall that's all around the temple on the outer edge. And then you get down to verse 6 through 16, and it begins to describe the eastern gate and the area all around it. The area inside the gate, it has pillars and it has porches and it has 3 rooms with windows all through it. And so this is all described, just this gate area and the area all around it is described here in verses 6 through 16. And this is just the gateway to get in the outer court is all that we're looking at right here. All of the distances, all of those things are listed. So that large, object right there, that is the gate, one of the 3 gates on the outer wall to get into the outer court. And it gives all these dimensions and measurements as you go through. And so if you read verses 6 through 16, this is exactly what it would be describing the whole way through, including the windows that are on that outer gate. As you go around, there's a picture of it from the outside, looking inside with its decorations. All of this is described in the scriptures. Okay. And so there we have the outer, a whole picture of the whole thing, but certainly it's that outer gate there on that outer wall that we're talking about. And so there's other gates that are just like it. There's a space between the outer gate to go to the inner gate. And so that 100 cubits is the space of the outer court itself. There's gates on the south side as well, with the same spacing between them. And then we'll get to the inner. Verses 17 through 19, it actually then goes on to describe 30 chambers that are around the 3 sides, because we're talking about gates on the east, north, and south. So on all 3 of those sides, you have these 30 chambers, and it lists that plus their distance to get to the inner court. Then we go down to verses 20 through 27, and this then describes the northern and the southern gates and the area all around those northern and southern gates. So just like the eastern gate, they have pillars and porches and 3 rooms each with windows in them as well, all around. And so that's what we're looking at right there. To this building. This building you're looking at on the screen right now is the eastern gate that goes into the inner court. So just like there was an outer gate, now there is an inner gate. So this picks up in your text in chapter 40, verse 28, down to verse 43. That's where this inner court and inner gate is described, from verse 28 down to verse 37, the gate and the area going to the inner court. And it's the very same as the gate that was at the outer court. We go down to chapter 40, down to verse 38 through verse 43, and it describes these tables that you're looking at right here on the screen. And these tables are to be used for sacrificial offerings. And notice that they're not even in the inside yet. We're just at the gate that goes to the inner court. And this is actually here in verses 38 through 43. This is actually the first mention of sacrifices in the millennial kingdom. We're going to get much, much more of that in chapter 44, 45, and 46. But it is already mentioned here in chapter 40 about the sacrifices that'll be happening. So we're going to talk much, much more of that the next time that we're together. So there's these tables that are right there in the outer area. And all of the dimensions for all of them are very, very specifically marked out, and what they're made of and all of that. By the way, one interesting note here about the substance of these things, and I might get into this a little bit more later, but in Solomon's temple, there was so much conversation about not just the design of it, but the ornamentation of it, the gold and the silver and the precious stones all around. This one is very different than that. The only mention of any materials is stone and wood. Stone and wood. Just things that are more simple or common of the earth. And now let's continue here. It's chapter 40. It's verse 44 through verse 47. Those three verses there talk about these priestly chambers, or maybe you could say abodes for the priests. These chambers are for not just priests, but for the singers, for the workers, and also for the ones that are doing the sacrificing, for all of the priests. These different houses here are for them. That's described in chapter 40, verse 44 through 47. And then we go to verse 48 and 49, and we now have the porch that goes into the temple itself. And so this is going into the temple from the eastern gate. Its size is listed, the pillars that are there, the steps that are right in front of these pillars, this porch that goes into the temple. Even just before that eastern inner gate is this little porch, and it's described in great detail for those couple of verses. Then every dimension of it. And now we're going to actually go inside, because that brings us to chapter 41. In chapter 41, from verse 1 through 26, all of the dimensions are now given at the beginning. That is this whole chapter 41, by the way. The first two verses, verse 1 and 2, describes just the entryway into the holy place and into the Holy of Holies. And so the dimensions are listed there. We get into verse 3 and 4, and now it gives us the dimensions of the Holy of Holies on the inside. And so we have these measurements. What you're looking at right now is a picture of the holy place. And if you've done much study on the tabernacle or the temple, you'll notice this is pretty bare. It doesn't have much furniture listed in here. You see down there at the end of the picture, we do have an altar. We're going to get to that. We'll talk about that altar that's down there that's actually in the Holy of Holies. But if you know your tabernacle or temple study, and you know that this is a picture of the holy place, and down there where that box-looking thing is, that's an altar, and I'm telling you that altar is in the Holy of Holies, tell me what's missing. Come on, yell it out. What's missing between the holy place and the Holy of Holies? The veil! It's not there. Isn't that? Go study that one. You'll love that one, right? What happened at the cross? That thing was put away with, and it is not needed. Access has been granted and made, and there is no veil in this new temple. In fact, you know this story, that after Christ died on the cross, 33 AD, how long did the temple stand? It stood until 70 AD, 47 years, and they stitched that thing back up. They stitched it up and put it back, and they hung that thing back up after Christ died on the cross. For the next 40-some years, they had a veil, a repaired veil. I mean, what else could God have done to say, I have made the way. You can come. Everybody can come. And now here in the millennial temple, of course, there is no veil. It doesn't exist. It's not a thing And so, again, in verse 3 and 4, we measured the Holy of Holies. We go down to verse 5 through 12. And in verse 5 through 12, it's describing now, in verse 5 through 12, the walls. It's 3 stories of widening side chambers. We'll get to that here. This is from the outside now. So what you're looking at is more or less the temple itself. Okay, we're already inside the outer gate. We come in the outer gate to the outer court. Okay, then we go in the inner gate. Now we're in the inner court, but then you go into the temple building itself. That's what this white building is. This is the temple building itself. Okay, which has the holy place and the Holy of Holies. And so this verse 5 through 12, it describes the walls inside. It describes how it has 3 stories of widening side chambers. It has a platform below it. And there you can see a picture of these widening chambers as it goes up. It's got these pillars so that the next level up can stick out even further. You see that? Why they widen like that? We don't know. See what I mean? Why do they widen? Would you like to raise your hand and tell me why this is designed this way? I have no idea. But I truly believe the Lord's going to tell us. He's going to show us and he's going to give us great meaning for all of these details. But all of these details are in here in great, great detail. It also talks about these, the spacing between every last part of this. Here's a little bit of a cutout so you can see these widening side porches, and it took the roof off of the picture just so you can see it a little better and how it's all connected. And the holy place is in there with the Holy of Holies in the back. It mentions all of these different rooms that are in there. The sort of like the platform on the outside and how tall all of that is, the space from the temple itself to the buildings that are right around it. We'll describe these buildings that are right around it in just a minute and what their purposes are. They all have great purposes, but that building in the middle is what you traditionally call the temple itself. It's the holy place and the Holy of Holies. And so the entrance and the side chambers, we've got all measurements for all of it. Okay. And then we go to verse 13 through 15. And in chapter 41, verse 13 through 15, now it gives us the measurement for the entire building. And I say the entire building or the entire temple because on the back of the holy place and the Holy of Holies, there's this little separated space. It's all connected, but there's this separated walkway and another building kind of connected on the back. And that's what this is here. It's a building on the west or on the back side, and it's all connected to the temple itself. And they call this a part of the actual temple. And that's verse 13 through 15. Well, when we go to verse 16, now, and here's your measurements of the whole temple, counting the holy place, the Holy of Holies, and that building on the back, all of those measurements. We go into verse 16 through 26 now, and now this begins to describe all of the details, not just the measurements, but now we get the details of the temple building. We get the window coverings and all of their sizes and dimensions and all of it. In verse 16 through 26, here at the end of the chapter 41. It also tells us about the carvings that are on the inside here. And you might be able to, we'll finally talk about that here. We definitely have here the palm trees, but if you notice between the palm trees, we have a figure, and these figures are described as a figure that has 2 faces, a face of a lion and the face of a man. And between each palm tree is one of these cherubim. And each one has the face of a man and the face of a lion. And I believe that if this wasn't on a 2-dimensional wall, if it was on a 4-dimensional or 3-dimensional object, I bet you'd be able to see an image that looked a lot more like something we saw earlier in Ezekiel. Well, at least in Ezekiel chapter 1, 2, and 3, when Ezekiel got the vision of those cherubim around the throne of God, what did they have? They had 4 faces, right? The face of a lion, the face of a man, the face of an eagle, and the face of an ox. And I believe this is just a 2-dimensional representation of those very cherubim that he saw there. And so these wall coverings, the cherubim, the palm trees, there's all the altar table itself is actually also described here. This is in the Holy of Holies. It's not an Ark of the Covenant. It's not the Ark of the Covenant. That's not needed. That Ark of the Covenant was when the high priest went in once a year and offered, and that was on the Day of Atonement to atone for sins. That's been taken care of. We don't have an Ark of the Covenant in here anymore. That's not needed. So if you're still looking for if you find Harrison Ford and he's still looking for that Ark, tell him to never mind. We won't need it. We're good. All we need is this. Okay. And so it also describes a bit of a double door that opens and closes with carvings all over this double door. And so a two-leaved double door. It really describes itself as a traditional closet folding door, is the design of the way it's described in there. And so just a nice overview or top view here of the temple complex, I'll say. This is all of the buildings that's inside of the inner court, okay? Or I should say these are all the buildings that are inside the outer court. And so in the front there, you see a bit of the inner court. Well, we go into chapter 42, and now it begins to describe all of these other buildings around the temple building itself. Okay, we've already talked about the temple building itself down the middle, having the holy place and the Holy of Holies. The building in the back, we didn't really get much detail about it, but it describes that as part of the temple. And now we're going to get into a lot of these other buildings. So chapter 42, verses 1 through 9, it describes these three-story dining halls. Three-story dining halls, and they get skinnier as they go up. And so these are the ones on the north side. They have these dining halls that get skinnier on the way up, more pyramid shaped as they go up. And both parts in that picture there are the dining halls. And so it's for the priests specifically. And these are all on the north side. So much detail is given. It's not just, we'll call them galleries in this picture, gallery or dining hall, same thing. It's where they ate. Okay. You got a lot of sacrifices. You need dining halls. Okay. People need to eat. And this is where they do it. But not just here on the north side. It's also set up for them to have them down here on the south side as well. So that is described then in chapter 42, verses 10 through 14. The southern side dining halls, just like the ones on the north. And also, one of the unique things, it says on the south side here that the priests not only have dining halls, but they also have priestly changing areas. And so, of course, has anybody spent time in the kitchen? Okay, you're gonna need some new clothes every now and again. Your apron gets dirty in a hurry, and so they have not only kitchens, but they have changing rooms on the south side here. We go then into verse 15 through verse 20, and believe it or not, we're already at least halfway through this description. So if you're hanging in there, you're making it. Okay, this is kind of the dry part until we get making some application here at the end. But at the end of chapter 42, verse 15 through 20, it then describes this standoff distance around the temple complex. It's actually a 1 mile standoff distance. Around that box you see in the middle, that's the outer court. The outside mark is a 1 mile marker. A 1 mile marker. So not only is the outer court special and holy, as you come into the outer court, you're thinking, well, I'm getting ready to serve the Lord. I'm going to worship the Lord. But even the 1 mile radius around the temple complex in this millennial kingdom is considered holy. It actually, in the King James, it actually says that this 1 mile standoff separates the holy from the profane. Maybe another way to say that is it separates the holy from what is common. The idea is that when you even get within 1 mile of the temple, you are to treat it as holy. There's something special about this. I can't even think of an earthly equivalent to that, but the closest I can get to is it's like when we were driving to grandma's house when we were a kid, right? And like before you even pull in the driveway, the parents are like, okay, listen, we're going in there. This is how you're going to act, and this is how you're going to behave, and you're going to do this, and you're going to do that. And if I so much as see you pick up anything and throw it at, your cousin, you're going to get, what? That the preparedness for going into grandma's house started well before we turned in the driveway. Right? That's as close of an analogy as I can give you. But that's the intention, is the Lord is saying, listen, before you even approach my house, before you even hit the door, you better have your heart prepared because you're going into something special. And that's the idea of why he did this. And now chapter 43, it will now be the end of our text for tonight. We're going to do much more. We're going to keep our brains turned on, but this will be the end of our text tonight. Chapter 43 now, it really discusses the return of God's glory to come back to the land and to fill this temple. In fact, I want to read just a little bit. Can you turn over with me to chapter 43? We're going to read just a couple of verses of this. In chapter 43, we're going to pick it up in verse 1. I heard no pages rustle. That's encouraging. Maybe that means you were already with me the whole time. All right, great. So chapter 43, verse 1, it says, "Then he led me to the gate facing towards the east, and behold, the glory of the Lord, the glory of the God of Israel, was coming from the way of the east, and his voice was like the sound of many waters. And the earth shone with his glory." In verse 3, "And it was like the appearance of the vision which I saw when he came to bring the city to ruin." That he's talking about his vision from chapter 1. And continuing in verse 3, "And the visions were like the visions which I saw by the river Kibar, and I fell on my face." So that's describing chapter 1 and chapter 3 when he got those visions. Verse 4, "And the glory of Yahweh came into the house by the way of the gate facing towards the east. And the Spirit lifted me up and brought me into the inner court, and behold, the glory of Yahweh filled the house." And so this is what it's describing here, this eastern gate. And, this vision here in this picture is describing as if it's the glory of God coming back into this house. This glory of God is no less than the Shekinah glory of God. That word Shekinah is the Hebrew, but it's the word we always think about for whenever the glory of God shows up. It's the same glory that followed them in the wilderness, that shone a light at the nighttime in the wilderness. There was a cloud by day for them in the wilderness. It was there in the tabernacle while they were in the wilderness and while they came into the land of Israel. This is the same glory of God that says that the glory of God overshadowed Mary, right? When she conceived a child. It's the same glory of God that was there at the transfiguration when Christ was transfigured before them. Even at the ascension of Christ, it talks about the glory of God showing up when he ascended to heaven. This is the very same thing. And it is going to once again rest in this place and say, "I am here. I am among men." I love the fact that, in fact, it talks about not just the glory of God returning, but it also talks about the voice of God. The voice of God in this section. And it's the same picture given as the voice of the Lord himself in Revelation chapter 1. And so Ezekiel sees God here in the same way that he saw him when he was commissioned in chapter 1 through 3. And yet the voice that shows up when the glory of God comes is none other than Jesus Christ himself. Just as, Ezekiel earlier in chapter 8, 9, 10, and 11, he saw the glory depart from the temple in Jerusalem in his days. He was taken in a vision to see that happen. And now he gets the joy of seeing the glory of God restored and coming back to the tabernacle or to the temple here in the near future. It will come back. So just an artist's rendering here of what that's like for the glory of God to come back to the temple. Now, this is not the tribulation temple. It never does. The glory of God never does have anything to do with the temple that's built in the tribulation time. But it will here. It's going to come back here to this one. And now I just want to continue into verse 6. And let's just read a little bit more in verse 6 through 12. Verse 6, "Then I heard one speaking to me from the house while a man was standing beside me. And he said to me, 'Son of man, this is the place of my throne and the place of the soles of my feet, where I will dwell among the sons of Israel forever. And the house of Israel will not again defile my holy name, neither they nor their kings, by their harlotry and by the corpse of their kings when they die.' In verse 8, by putting their threshold by my threshold and their doorpost beside my doorpost, with only the wall between me and them. And they have defiled my holy name by their abominations, which they have done. So I have consumed them in my anger." But in verse 9, "Now let them put away their harlotry and the corpses of their kings, put them far from me, and I will dwell among them forever. As for you," in verse 10, "Son of man, describe the house of Yahweh to the house of Israel, that they may feel dishonor for their iniquities, and let them measure the plan. If they feel dishonor for all that they have done, make known to them the design of the house, its structure, its exits, its entrances, all of its designs, its statutes, its laws, and write it in their sight so that they may keep its whole design and all its statutes and do them.
You've been listening to Believing the Word, a ministry of author and pastor Dan Shunk at Calvary Chapel Chambersburg in Chambersburg, Pennsylvania. Pastor Dan has been teaching through a series in the book of Ezekiel. We'd love to get connected with you and hear about how God is working in your life through this teaching program. You can reach us by phone at 717-500-1102. Again, that number is 717-500-1102. You can also check us out at our website at ccchambersburg.org, where you can learn more about the ministry of Calvary Chapel Chambersburg and find our chapter-by-chapter messages. If you're in the Chambersburg area, we'd love to have you join us Sunday mornings and Thursday evenings on 5121 Coffee Avenue. Thank you for joining us today. We'll be back with more from the book of Ezekiel. But until then, this has been Believing the Word with Pastor Dan Shunk.